Now, back in May, I made my first ever YouTube video, which was a video talking about the White Sox, who at that time had been one of the most disappointing teams in baseball to that point. They had had a very bad start to their year. Looking at it now in August, I want to see just how things have changed and how the White Sox are looking now the season is coming towards an end. Now, something I talked about in that first video was the White Sox key additions from that offseason. And I went over, the multiple additions that the Sox made from free agency and trades. And looking back at it now, I don't think a lot has changed other than this one player who has definitely changed his season. Josh Harrison went from possibly one of the worst players in baseball, like statistically was one of the worst in baseball, to now has actually become a pretty solid contributor for the White Sox. He's improved his batting average, his OPS plus, his OPS as a whole have both improved, and he's managed to actually put together a pretty solid season after that really poor start. Defensively, he's still been pretty solid. So Josh Harrison has done a very good job of kind of turning around what was a pretty bad season to begin with. Now let's talk about Joe Kelly, who at the time of that first video was just returning from the injured list. And basically to this point, that's been the story of the season. He has a very bloated ERA, but at the same time, he hasn't really made a whole lot of appearances. He's only pitched 24 innings so far. He's basically been on and off the injured list the entire year. I can't really grade him on how he's performed so far this first year with the Sox because I don't really know when he's truly been healthy this year. Looking at then Kendall Graveman, his stats definitely look a lot better. Though he's pitched in a lot more games than Joe Kelly has. He's been managed to stay healthy. And at the beginning of the year, though, I felt like a lot of people were kind of overrating him a little bit. Like he had some moments where he definitely blew some games where he would come in, give up a single, give up a walk, and he definitely had better stats on the surface than what he was actually doing when you watched him, if you kind of understand what that means. Like he looked a lot better statistics wise than he actually did when you watched him. So he has improved a lot. Recently, I think since the All-Star game, I don't really think we've had any real issues with him. His ERA has definitely improved a little bit. But Kendall Graveman has so far been a pretty solid signing. And then we have Vince Velasquez, who had a really bad start to his year and has now missed almost the entire year. Like quietly, he got hurt and I think is now rehabbing, but I don't really know if he's going to have a place with the White Sox now, considering that Lance Lynn has returned from the injured list. Then we have AJ Pollock, who was the big move of the offseason for the Sox. They traded away Craig Kimbrell, who was a guy who they gave up a lot to get for AJ Pollock. And he was expected to be a guy who could immediately come in and improve this team's outfield. And that just hasn't been the case. Like he has been about as average to below average as he could be. Like I was expecting at the time I made that video, like I expected AJ Pollock to immediately turn his game around. Like I expected him to be able to consistently hit the ball, considering that he's just too good of a player to slump for that long. And unfortunately, he's kind of been in a year-long slump. Like he has moments where he looks really good, but then he has other moments where he doesn't look that good. And on the surface, the stats just don't jump out at you at all. Like honestly, I think to this point, this has been kind of a disappointment of a move for the Sox, if I'm being honest. Now, considering the fact that Craig Kimbrell's in LA and has been pitching pretty well, and also considering the fact that Nick Madrigal and Cody Hoyer are both playing for the Cubs now, like this whole move with Craig Kimbrell, Nick Madrigal, AJ Pollock, like everything has kind of been disappointing, and AJ Pollock has just not been having that great of a year on the South Side. And guys like Yasmani Grandal have continued to have very bad seasons. Like he was having a really bad year up until the point when he got hurt, and then he got hurt, came back, and it's just kind of been the same thing with him. Like he's not even taking walks anymore is the problem. Like last season, the big complaint with him was that he was taking too many walks. He wasn't swinging enough. He's not even taking walks anymore. Now he's just kind of striking out a lot. His stats don't look good. He has been having a very bad year. Yohan Moncada, who was a guy the Sox were really depending on, he's also been having a really bad year. He started the year off injured, obviously, came back, and it's been just pretty bad from him so far. Like the stats also look really bad. No, defensively he's still pretty solid despite a couple mess ups along the line, but for the most part, like Yohan Moncada, the hitting numbers have still been really bad. Other guys the Sox are depending on, like Luis Robert, like the injuries have definitely caught up to him. No doubt about it. He's been injured for most of this season, but at the same time, like the stats don't jump off the sheet. Like there was people expecting him to be an MVP candidate, and he's been injured every other, like once a month at this point. This guy's having some sort of injury that's going to require him to miss some time. So there's been a lot of inconsistency from this White Sox lineup to this point. So it has not been perfect from this lineup at all. And the guys they were really depending on to carry the load, like Grandal, like Moncada, like Robert, have all just kind of been flops so far this year. Now, looking at the Sox pitching staff, there's definitely been a good amount of negatives. For one, Lucas Giolito has not been the ace that people were expecting him to be. Like, I feel like ever since that 2020 year when he got very hyped up, had that no hitter against Pittsburgh and had a lot of people, believing he could potentially be a Cy Young candidate. We've now seen him kind of take a dip in his production. Like now he almost has a 5 ERA. He's definitely not been having a very good year. There's been moments where he's definitely been left out to dry by Tony La Russa. No, there's been times where he's been left in games way too long. But at the same time, home runs have killed him this year. No, he's not really striking guys out like he should be. So really, there's been a lot of issues with Giolito. Then you look at Lance Lynn, who has some kind of, I guess, excuse. Like he came back from injury mid-year and hasn't looked the same. Like through 59 innings, has a 5.8 ERA right now, and he's just not really the Lance Lynn that we've saw last season. And that's kind of concerning considering the fact that the Sox locked him up under an extension, and he's also 35 years old. And if he's not able to recreate that 2021 year, then why is he here? And then looking at the bullpen, like when you look past guys like Joe Kelly and Matt Foster, like there has been some success stories out of this bullpen, but there's also been a lot of issues. Like some guys you've been depending on, like I talked about, were guys like Aaron Bummer, who's been hurt most of the year. You had guys like Kendall Graveman, who hasn't looked amazing at times. Liam Hendricks, even at times, has looked a little shaky. So, I mean, there's been a lot of issues in this pitching staff, but there is also a lot of positives that I will touch on later. And looking at their advanced fielding numbers, like things aren't really improving defensively. They've gotten slightly better, but at the same time, it's still not great. They've still committed nearly the most errors in the MLB. Their fielding percentage is still top 5 worst. Their defensive rating, or defensive efficiency, I should say, actually, is pretty much still near the bottom of the league. Like at this point, there has been so many issues defensively. And unfortunately, guys like Tim Anderson, who are already very shaky defenders, aren't really helping that. Yohan Moncada Yohan Moncada and Josh Harrison both have been playing okay defense. But no, there's been so many issues with this team. When you have guys like Andrew Vaughn who are playing corner outfield roles when they're naturally first baseman, there's going to be a lot of issues defensively. And so far for the Sox, the issues have kind of continued to pile up as the year has gone on. And yes, we need to talk about the injury bug because it has been something that's killed the White Sox basically for the last 3 years now. Tim Anderson recently went down for about a month with a hand injury. Luis Robert has been on and off the IL this season. You had guys like Jake Berger who were playing very good baseball end up getting hurt and have basically now missed the entire year at this point. Eloy Jimenez had injury issues, returned, and has looked pretty good, but at the same time has still some serious injury concerns. Danny Mendick, who was playing very good baseball until he ends up getting hurt, tears his ACL, out for the rest of the year. Like there's been so many injury issues with this team that it's kind of hard to keep track of everything if I'm honest, because there's just been so many issues, and it seems like kind of the same thing every year with this team, that they are just having these issues with injuries. And it seems like this team might just be cursed or something, because the injuries continue to bite this team when there's teams out there who have competed for years, like the Astros, who have really never been hit with the injury bug like this. So I'm not really sure why it's different with the Sox. I'm not sure why there's these issues with this team when it comes to injuries, but whatever it is, man, it's just been really killing this team's momentum all year. And now we need to get to Tony La Russa, who has basically been the embodiment of the Sox this year, like a complete disappointment. of a hire for the Sox so far. Like at this point, I wouldn't be shocked if he were to be fired next season, but I also wouldn't be shocked if he were to be given a 5-year contract extension. Like that's just how this Jerry Reinsdorf has owned this team the last couple years. Like this move has been just awful for the Sox. Like Tony La Russa, it seems like every other week now is in the news for him saying something stupid in the media or walking a batter or intentionally walking a batter in the middle of their at bat. Like there's just no reason Tony La Russa should have ever been hired by the Sox. He's been an absolutely terrible hire so far, and even points me towards the rest of the coaching staff. Like, what does Frank Benicchito do for this hitting core? Like, this hitting core is absolutely awful. They swing at everything. They have very little plate patience. Like, what is he doing for this team? And then you look at Miguel Cairo, who's the bench coach. Like, where is he throughout all this? Like, when Tony La Russa is making these horrible decisions, where is Miguel Cairo? Like, is he just going along with what Tony La Russa says, or does he just not care enough to say anything? Like this entire coaching staff has been absolutely awful, and I do believe that this needs to be addressed this offseason. Like I think Rick Hahn has to do something about the hitting issues. Like Frank Menachino needs to go, Miguel Cairo needs to go, and I guess he doesn't really have authority over Tony La Russa, but Jerry Reinsdorf needs to do something about this coaching staff because it has been terrible this year. And I do feel like a lot of the blame needs to go to the front office here because, first of all, like the trade deadline was a massive failure for the Sox. Like there were options out there for them, especially in the hitting core, that they just chose not to go after. Like they allowed teams like the Mets, Yankees to get much better while they just sort of stood pat and did nothing. And they did bring in Jake Diekman, which is a move I liked. Like they needed a left-handed reliever. I would much rather have Diekman than not have him. But at the same time, like there were guys out there you could have went out and got for pretty minuscule returns. Like I understand they wanted to try and protect the farm system, which is already pretty weak. But at the same time, like if you're trying to win right now, like if this was your all-in year, then you need to go all in. Like you have to go big in order to win out. Like look at the Braves last year. Like they made 4 big trades at the deadline for hitters who all benefited them in the long run. Like they brought in Rosario, Soler, Peterson, and Duvall, and all 4 of those guys played huge roles in their World Series win. The White Sox needed to do something like that, and they didn't. And I feel like a lot of that blame needs to go to Rick Hahn in the front office. And I feel like this season sort of needs to put Hahn on the hot seat in a way. Like if he can't fix this a little bit, then he needs to be put on the hot seat here. Now, there has been a lot of positives that have come out of this season. In particular, Dylan Cease has become, in my opinion, the best pitcher in the American League. Like statistically, this guy has been amazing this year. He's striking out batters at a historic rate. No, he's had stretches where he's not even made runs, or he's had 1 or less earned runs in like 13 straight starts, which is absolutely incredible. Like Dylan Cease has been pitching incredibly well this year. Michael Kopech has adjusted nicely to a starting pitching role. Johnny Cueto, who was a not a midseason, but spring training signing, came in and has pitched very well with the Sox this year to a 2.9 ERA after what was a tough tenure in San Francisco. You have Ronaldo Lopez has been an absolute stud out of the bullpen. Like he has been honestly, I think the best pitcher in that bullpen all year. Then you have guys in the lineup like Tim Anderson, who has represented the Sox in the All Star game. Before his injury, was playing very good. Jose Abreu has turned his year around nicely after he got off to a very bad start. He's now been playing very good. But no, outside of that, also I need to mention Andrew Vaughn because Andrew Vaughn has been playing very well as well. But outside of that, like there's not a lot of this year, unfortunately for the Sox. So hopefully they're going to be able to turn this thing around. No, they play a very weak schedule, and as of late, they're coming off of a sweep of the Detroit Tigers. So hopefully that's going to be enough to turn their season around. But they're playing in a very weak division. The Twins have been kind of struggling recently. The Guardians have been taking advantage of the Twins' struggles as they now sit in first place. However, this is the Sox division to win. Like they still have full reign on this division, in my opinion. I still think they're going to end up winning this division. Like their schedule's too soft to not win this division, in my opinion, or at least get a wild card spot. So for the Sox, Hopefully, they're going to be able to turn things around. But that is going to wrap up this video talking about the White Sox. Hopefully, I do not have to make another one of these videos. And if I do, it's going to be a positive video where I talk about the Sox making the postseason or something. But, anyways.